Hello and welcome to another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at a mid-shadow list with all the improvements from Starforged Legends. We've got some nice cards added to the deck with a little extra draw power in the last word and a nice little 1 damage, which is good against forest and blood mostly. I found it's also great for just putting pressure, as usually you can trade into most 3 drops, which is quite nice. Other than that, we've got the Clash deal 2 damage and restore 2 health at the end of your turn ability of Seraph of the Night, which is an amazing card. I'm still finding ways to play it, like where I'm comfortable playing it on a turn against certain decks, but definitely a card I can see the full power of. Other than that, we've only got the Dark Blade Fiend, and that's pretty much it for differences. Other than that, you're pushing mostly shadow generation, board presence, and just overwhelming your opponent with sheer numbers. So there's not too much else. This thing's great for dealing with any small drops or any other kind of mirror matches as well. Works quite nicely, which you'll see a lot of at the moment, as Shadow and Rune seem to be the quite popular decks, with Forest taking up probably a good 20% as well. So pretty interesting to see what comes out of this expansion so far, but we're only in the first week, so we'll get right into some games. So the first match we're going to look at is a Shadow on Shadow match. Not uncommon to get Shadowverse Shadow matches. Nep is starting to pop up a little more frequently though, so you will either be dealing with a mid-range or a Nep in most cases. Occasionally you will have Dark Alice, but that's pretty rare. I actually haven't encountered one so far. Starting off with a pretty average hand though, you want those 2 drops, preferably the 1 drops, and you want stuff like Bone Chimera, because Bone Chimera is pure value. So having 2 good options here, and when your opponent has nothing, it's always better to go for the draw power, unless you are expecting some crazy 2-drop. But this just allows me to pretty much play it off, go face, not worry about too much. So the value here is that I can trade with most of their board, while at the same time keeping pretty much everything I could want available to me. And getting a triple draw off Soul Conversion just always feels good. Of course, if they had have played Catacomb, I would have been in a worse position, but fortunately no Catacomb. But we have some alright options from here. I mean, little Soul Squashers actually can do some work if I use the 1/1 as trade fodder, or I can just play whatever else. Bone Chimera trades again with the evolve, and then I can just ram face if I want to. I mean, this deck always has a hand. I mean, even when I'm pretty much out of cards, I can usually turn it around pretty easily. I would recommend running 3 Demon Lords. Currently I only have 2, but you can quite easily subsidize whichever card you want for 1 single Demon Lord. So we just play off it, use Soul Squasher as a bit of a beat down stick. Of course that trade kind of sucks, but it's not the worst possible situation to be in. I mean, we do get to trade with these pretty well, while at the same time just going face. And luckily managed to fill our board pretty nicely. I had no need to play Demon Lord in the next turn unless I absolutely have to. And if they decide to clear something, I can pretty much just guarantee the trade anyway. So we can do crazy amounts of damage now if we wanted to, or just Catacomb. I decided to go with the Catacomb just because I am worried about board clears. Shadow does have a board clear now, and plenty of ways to block me out, so I didn't really want to be in a position where playing Demon Lord onto a board where it could just be completely cleared in the next turn was a bad idea, so I felt like I made the right choice overall. Of course, it does make it harder because the trades aren't going to be any good. I was really hoping they'd trade that 6/7, but they didn't. Fortunately, Soul Conversion coming to my rescue, allowing me to open up the Demon Lord play so I can then hit face. Not that it would have been a big issue, it just would have made my trading a little harder.
This head can't be taken.
And then a pretty easy 12 damage. So one of the more popular decks right now is Rune for sure, especially when you've got like Chimera Shifts decks popping up pretty much everywhere at this stage. Doesn't surprise me too much. You will also get the occasional Earth Rune because that is actually quite a solid deck. If you haven't seen me play that, please go check that out because it does do the job nicely. Of course, you've got plenty of good options. I mean, this deck just has a lot of early game, a lot of board summons, that sort of thing. So your opening hand, as long as you've got, you know, a 2-drop, a 3-drop, maybe even your 1-drops if you are super lucky, you're pretty set for the early game. And against something like D-Shift, as long as you put pressure on the board constantly like I am here, you can usually win. Of course, if you get unlucky and they just happen to have answer after answer, it's going to be hard, but not impossible. And Bone Chimera, a very sticky card again. Having that in your opener is almost perfect. And unless you're really aiming for something else, it's always worth keeping Bone Chimera. Fortunately, no really good play here. I mean, I do get to use all my points and I can get a nice turn 5. But other than that, I really didn't want to have to use Zombie Party in that way.
This is your fate.
And things like Merlin making my life really difficult.
A revelation.
Fortunately, I don't need to worry about Merlin too much. I mean, it's not going to trade with the 2-2 because it instantly dies, so they're pretty much guaranteed to trade with the 1-1. And they're probably going to avoid the Bone Chimera. That was kind of what I was thinking.
Killing never gets boring.
And luckily, thanks to the 2 Necromancy effect of this ward, I can easily take it out by just hitting face with 5.
No! Unbelievable!
My time has come.
And the ward also makes it hard for them to play D-Shift any earlier than you'd really want them to.
It won't be long now.
Magic Owl. Spell boost everything in your hand by 2. Really pushing out the cards though.
Don't you wanna die?
So I don't quite have lethal with Demon Lord. I wish I had.
Want to play?
It's fine. I was think 1 off. I was able to get to 10 and that would have been it.
No!
Actually no, I think I got to 11, so yeah, I was 1 off. So I had to make a different play. But with Bone Chimera, that should be plenty enough. I just had to hope that I didn't get D-shifted turn 6, which is quite possible now.
Don't you wanna die?
Not as lucky either, because they do clear pretty much everything, excluding this 2-2. Not leaving me with many decent options. I just decided to flood the board and hope next turn is good. I mean, they've only got 3 cards, so if one of those was D-Shift, they'd have to have a Chimera or something crazy. So I was pretty lucky, honestly. And the final match to look at is another Shadow match. Like I said, these are the most common decks, so these tend to be what I was getting wins against. Since this deck does a pretty good job at picking off both its mirror and its rune decks. I started off with a pretty bad hand. Demon Eater and Soul Conversion in an opener with no other 1-drop isn't very good. I usually like to keep maybe the Soul Conversion and drop something else when I'm in those situations. Optimally, you want to just curve with this deck as best you can, up until a point. Then you got to really decide, is a trade worth it or is face worth it? Do I build on the board or do I hold back on the board? Those are the kind of bigger decisions you've got to make with a lot of these cards. I mean, I'm pretty safe to kill this. A single draw isn't that big a deal. Not in this really early game. Especially when I'm already at a huge advantage board-wise. And thanks to Catacomb, my turn 4 is pretty much perfect.
What are you hiding inside?
So even if they Catacomb, I wasn't too concerned, as I get a lot more advantage out of it. And because I'm using a bunch of low-cost cards, Lurching Corpse is great on this early game. I mean, they're gonna basically just keep summoning my stuff back out, leaving me with quite a nice little board.
More eating.
And another Bone Chimera. I just couldn't stop drawing these. And because I wanted to keep the Death's Breath, I do decide to use the Chimera as trade material. I didn't want to be wasting that Death's Breath. So that's why I decided to hit one of the skeletons that isn't going to proc. Or both, sorry, so that I can get those draws and I can set Death's Breath up in the next turn if I need to. Plus it makes it hard to trade into the 1/1s that both have Death Rattles. Or not, Death Rattle, last word, sorry.
I trust you are prepared.
The bones embrace me.
And since we've both got pretty solid hands, I mean, he's had an answer for most of what I've had. He's got a reasonable sized hand, so we can assume he's got some pretty good cards. All I can really do is plan ahead into swarming and getting as much damage on the board as possible for turn 7.
You're mean. Ow.
I mean, with a full Hector board here, as long as they aren't doing anything absolutely crazy,
I'll show you.
I can pretty much clear. I do have to get a little lucky though, which is kind of unfortunate. I mean, if I had traded this a little bit better, I probably would have rammed the 2/2 into something, so that I wasn't getting in this position where I had to trade like this. I would have been able to ram the 2/2 into the other one, and then I would have got the 1 damage on one of those, and then trade the skeletons, and would have cleared 2 zombies for the same cost as it took me just to use.
I am Belinus the Shining.
So I'm only going to survive 1 turn
Why so angry?
with something on board that's half decent.
Finally, a
Unfortunately, Demon Lord is that card, so Demon Lord into Demon Lord for lethal never feels naughty. Nah, not at all.
This head can't
Maybe a little dirty, but that's about it. Nah, going fast is perfectly
You're
fine.
too strong.
Demon Lord's balance was really good, and I actually enjoy the card now. It's not absolutely broken. So as always, deck list will be in the description below. There's not too much that I'd probably change in this version of the deck other than putting 3 Demon Lords in and probably just dropping 1 Demon Eater or something. That's the card I added in place of a Demon Lord, only because, like I said, I've only got 2 Demon Lords at current. But I'm pretty happy with how it's performed. It's done me pretty well. I mean, over 8 odd games, I won I think 6. I only lost to a Forest deck that managed to outvalue what I had on board at the time, but I had a pretty shoddy hand. And a Sword deck, and that was purely because of the aggro. I just couldn't keep up with its, 3 health stat lines that, Shadow can't do anything against, really, Yeah, so hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button and subscribe, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.